Martha Williams. Welcome to YogaTalks with the Yoga Factory. It's really good to see your face. And it's been an amazing journey over the past couple of years, really getting to know you so much better. The first time, I'm trying to remember the first time that I saw you from afar teaching at one of the teacher trainings from the giant podium. I don't think you made it to my teacher training, which was fall 2007. Were you there? I think you might have been pregnant with Rafe.
I was there.
You were there?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
I was pregnant with Rafe in 2009.
Okay, great. So I probably, my teacher training, I blocked out a lot of it, but I recall. You do? Nice.
Yes, you were quite a bit stiffer than you are now.
Very much so, yeah. When I first started practicing, as Mary Jarvis says, I looked like a Heath bar. I didn't bend, I cracked.
I was going to say like old beef jerky, but you know, Heath bar, that's good too.
It's taken a long time and a lot of practice to get to where I am today.
Yes.
I remember very clearly seeing you at some of the teacher trainings you were teaching, and you would start just hollering out random trivia. Like you would quote a Bob Dylan song and be like, who knows who that was? And if somebody called it out, you would like throw them a t-shirt from your yoga studio. And it just like, it was so fun and lighthearted. I always remember that. And then as I've gotten to know you better and better, there's just so many fascinating aspects to you as a person. But first, I just wanted to check in, during this COVID-19 epidemic that's going around, how are you and how is your studio doing out there in Minneapolis?
Well, it's hard because, you haven't looked at the financials yet.
Right.
Really had 2 weeks. And I always think, don't worry about something until you actually know the data. So, yes. I mean, as far as a yoga studio standpoint, like people are asking me personally about me, I'm great. My family's great. We eat great food. We live on a beautiful property and we get to be outside all day. And I have a kid who's in high school and he feels like he won the lottery. I mean, there's no school. It could be better, right?
Right.
And we've sheltered them quite a bit from the news, as we always do a little bit, because it can get very strange.
Yeah, the news can get dark.
I try to listen mostly to the BBC World News. That helps me because it sort of is like big picture, rather than just like our own American drama. Mm-hmm. And so I'm great. I don't know how the studio is doing. I know that day to day people still want to take my class, and nice. That's something that I learned. And it's not just my class, it's our classes. There are 22 teachers on our schedule, and they're all over the place right now, Wisconsin and Texas and Colorado.
Right.
And here. But somebody told me early on, like, what, I'm going to open this studio. What if nobody shows up? Or, what if it doesn't fly? And everybody has those doubts. You have those doubts continually, always, and the master said, well, if one person shows up to take your class, be grateful, teach that person. If nobody shows up, practice.
Right.
Keep it simple. Try to just think, I'm in a place of service. If nobody's asking me to do it, then I just don't do it. If somebody's there and they want to teach, great. And Marty Chen taught me this too. Like, we did this big fashion show and I was like, I don't know if anybody's going to show up. Like, fashion is not the same in Minnesota as it is in Austin and New York City and LA. What if nobody shows up? And she's like, I've learned this. Just, if 5 people show up, great. If 15 people show up, great. Just make sure it's like the best event of their lives. I was like, that's, because it can be like, you just worry how many people, and what if people are worried because there's not enough people. And then I expected this kind of energy, it's 4:30 on a Friday. I thought I was going to have a packed class and only 5 people showed up or whatever. And then I know this doesn't happen on Friday, but And then you figure out, oh, it's the Super Bowl Sunday, or there's the Grammys. Of course nobody showed up. Why did I take it so personally? I let it
Hey, speaking of
dampen
cool
the,
ones.
you let it affect your whole class, that you think, oh, why aren't 30 people here? There's just 3. Well, those 3 are super important and they need a good class. And so I guess I've learned that as well. And then, but we also have to keep the doors open. It is a business. And I've been tempted at times. We went through the recession, we've gone through a lot. And I think, how do you keep the doors open? How do you not, turn it into a charity? How do you not turn it into something where there's, 7 benefactors who want the studio and they want it a certain temperature, or whatever, and they'll kind of
they run the show instead of you.
To dictate everything, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I thought it was supposed to be, body temperature in here. Why is it 120 degrees? Whatever. It just can change the way it is, and then you go away from why you started a studio in the first place. Maybe not, depends on why you opened it, but I think what I'm learning the most from this situation is that not just the pranayama, the meditation, the yoga skills that we've been given, like, this is our time. This is when we get to show the world, like, this is what this does. It alleviates stress, it keeps you well. If we can't demonstrate our tools now and not keep going on the internet and saying, I'm worried, I'm scared, we can be the ones to be there, to be like, think of what you've got, stay positive. All of the things, the tools that we've been taught as yogis to be like, not, non-reactionary and not knee-jerk reaction. This is what we've been trained for. And then on the other hand, if you've owned a studio many years like you have, Zeb, like, this is our territory. This is how we live every day. There's no certainty. There's no paycheck. There's no insurance. There's no safety net. There's me teaching this yoga, and that's all I got. There's me. What if I have to clean the bathrooms and do all the everything? This is what we do. So, like,
it's kind of the way we always function.
That's not new. That's every day. That's not. Those are 2 ways in which I think we're just well suited for it. The third would be that, our immune systems are strong, but.
Well, and really, that's what we're trying to teach as yoga teachers as well. I mean, all the postures and the pranayama, that's important, but can people start to learn to live in the present moment and to just be okay and not worry and not live in the past? And that's a hard lesson.
Mm-hmm. Or the future. A lot of people, now people are saying the word depression. We're heading into, the second Great Depression. And it's a little bit far-fetched, I think, to just, I think that's a little bit too alarmist, but, we're headed into the unknown, and that is every day.
It's scary.
Whatever you thought was for sure or for certain, that's an illusion. You're wrong. There is no tomorrow is going to be another normal day. That's not what life is. That's
absolutely
never was.
And I mean, if you look back at like yoga philosophy, the ancient yogis believed that everything is around us that we can touch and feel and see and smell really is an illusion. And we're just here to sort of experience and maybe enjoy the ride, maybe not, but learn something from it.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So you, over the past couple of years, have been going to school and working in the healthcare profession. I forget your exact major. What is it again?
It's an associate's degree of science in vascular ultrasound, or diagnostic medical sonography. So it'll be like carotid artery scans, aorta, deep vein thrombosis,
And
anything having to do with
you and
service.
I have had discussions like, it's fascinating the stuff that you're learning
Yes.
and experiencing.
Yep.
But you're not actually working in the field right now. So this isn't really, the epidemic hasn't really affected you in that way, has it?
Well, yes, I started working at the University of Minnesota. So when you're close to the finish of your degree, you do sort of like what a doctor does in residency. So I was at the University of Minnesota and um, at the Cardiovascular and Surgery Center, and it's an outstanding facility, an outstanding place to work, and I was very lucky to be there. But 2 weeks ago, let's see, 8 days ago, I stopped because they don't have anybody working there who's not necessary.
Yeah.
So I was still technically learning. And what they've done, it's very interesting. They've alternated weeks. So like full-time employees, they're 1 week on and 1 week off to minimize exposure to each other. And um, it's they're sort of buckling down. The University of Minnesota is now owned by M Health. So Fairview, it's giant um, uh, medical machine, and
We have those in Pittsburgh
they
too.
were the first ones treating this in Minneapolis. So that happened pretty quickly.
So from your perspective, and like all the stuff that you've learned about the heart and the lungs and how like all our internal functions, it's sort of like weaving your new medical expertise into your yoga knowledge. How can pranayama and, you know, an asana practice, how can that affect us and benefit us in this time with this virus running rampant around the world?
Yeah. So there are so many facets to that.
Yeah, it's a big question.
I'm reading BKS Iyengar's book Light on Pranayama right now, and it, like, what I know just scratches the surface of what pranayama is. And I think, you know, he would be an expert. So I think I'm not surprised. It's not like I'm insulted by the fact that I know so little. But the two things first and foremost about meditation and pranayama, I believe, that are profound are, number one, in meditation, the density, the areas in our brain, the brain changes entirely, of course, when you have a very regular meditation practice. But what they're showing is that areas in the brain that are active when you meditate change in density. So it may not be size, but like density. So that to me is a big deal. And then with pranayama, obviously the lungs, the elasticity of the lungs, the health of the lungs, which I think should be thought of as one of the most important parts of the immune system, they develop differently. But because of the meditation aspect, while you're breathing, the chemicals in your blood change entirely. So then that's what is coursing through your body. Average size of the vascular system is 10,000 miles. And then how quickly a red blood cell moves around the body in a matter of seconds. So it's like more,
Yeah.
I mean, when you think
it's
about
almost
light,
moving at light speed.
you know that your brain isn't following it anymore. At least mine isn't. Maybe Stephen Hawking's was, but I don't follow that. But then just the truth of the vascular system, okay, so it's supplying blood, and then it's supplying this different ingredients in it, you know, ingredients that will heal and nourish rather than break down. Like the heart is very, very sensitive to adrenaline, for instance, can sort of harm the heart long term. And, you know, cortisol, dopamine, you know, what's different when you practice yoga. You know, somebody discussed with me once, you know, are you in a stress response? And I think certainly new people there may be a time when, you know, in that sort of like buffer zone, when you're just like, you know, like entering into yoga, learning it could be stressful, but eventually it's supposed to be one of the most relaxing parts of your day, meditation as well. So those are the chemicals that are rushing around inside your bloodstream, the very relaxed, at ease, happy, content set of ingredients or hormones. So that is significant. And then I remember, you know, Bikram really stressing, like, if there is no stretching, there is no exercise. And I remember thinking, like, my idea of stretching was like somebody like hanging upside down from something, or just, you know, stretching or extension of one area of the body. That was my idea of stretching. But so now, understanding the vascular system, all arteries have this layer of muscle, the media layer of the muscle. And this is the way I think of it now, is that when you look at someone that is very, very well toned, and it's not like they have like lots of muscle, it's just like lots of functional muscle and everything moves really well. You know, it's like a leopard. You know, you look at that person and you can see it on the external, but you obviously can't see someone's vascular system like that. But that's the way I think of it now, is that that 10,000 miles, very intricate, important superhighway, is toned like that. You know, that muscles and that artery wall are able to expand when they need to, contract when they need to. They're just strong and buff. And so that's a huge important factor. I think there's many things that can give you other parts of exercise. You know, they'll tone your muscles, or they'll, you know, any kind of movement moves the venous system, that return blood. And like walking is so good for people it's like bare minimum, but it's very applied the way that we, you know, compress certain organs and stimulate certain glands. It's very intricate, and I think, you know, our instincts when we start yoga are very important. I remember my instinct was finding a series of postures that I knew I was going to go to, and they would be the same every time, gave me ownership of what I was doing, and made me feel like, well, now I can kind of progress in a way that I'm being intentional about it, rather than putting all the trust in this teacher at said studio. You know, teachers make offhanded comments, and then you think like, I hope I never do that to a student. But it's a huge turnoff for me. I went in one day and this teacher was like, I'm in the mood for back bends today. You know, and then it was like 50 minutes of back bends. And I remember thinking, that just seems really unscientific to me. Because clearly I don't even, like, who is this person? Why are we doing what she's in the mood for? What, you know, so it didn't sit well with me. I wanted to be able to do something that was really appropriately scientifically thought out. So
yeah I think that's the way a lot of us feel. And, you know, there's plenty of people that feel the exact opposite as well. But yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I was reading through your bio on your website just to sort of like get an idea of what to talk about in this little interview. And I was reading that you started practicing in 1991, yes?
Yep.
And you opened your studio in 2001.
Yep.
So you've been practicing for 29 years at this point. and your
Wow.
studio's been open for 19, if my math is correct.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, so again, it's a lot to sort of encapsulate in one little, short little talk, but like, what can you tell us a little bit about that journey, and like what you think your biggest takeaway right now in your life from all of that is?
I think my
Being a
biggest
studio owner, being a practitioner, like there's so much.
my takeaway is that you get way more out of it than you put in. Because when the going gets rough, you're so invested, you can't just walk away. That's, like the bigger decisions that you make in your life, I think, put an investment there, put down roots, because the journey might be really hard, and um you might doubt that decision because it's such a huge investment.
Yeah.
You can't just, have somebody else be the mama, you know
Hmm.
put your kids in an orphanage for 3 years and go away for a while. It's like, it doesn't work that way. you
Right.
know you don't.
So it's that level of commitment.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
but you doubt it a lot. I mean, I don't know how often I just think like, this is not for me. This is not for me. This is not what I signed up for, or whatever. Your marriage, your kids, your studio, those are the biggest things for me that
Hmm.
that I'm committed to and invested in. But it, puts you through hell and back a lot. And so I would say that, you know you know that level of investment. When there's like a class at your studio where um you oh, let's just say Super Bowl Sunday. Like, nobody wants to teach Super Bowl Sunday, right? Well, I do. I'm like, I'm not doing anything else. I'm so glad to
I'm
have something to do.
I'm with you.
But
Yes.
okay, so better example. Like, let's say Sunday night I have this chance to like take Zeb's Zoom class, right? Like, oh,
Mhm.
that's awesome. I can't wait. That's so great. But there's 18 teachers at my studio and none of them want to teach, and I have to teach. I'm going to go there dragging my fingers on the ground for a little while, like a Neanderthal, and just like, oh, but nobody else can do it, so you can't just say, somebody else will do it. It's
Right.
okay. But
Right.
then you go and you realize there's all these people that want you to be there to teach, and that giving that is so much more fulfilling than satisfying my simple pleasure of, whatever. I think,
Yeah.
and then, always, don't you feel like whenever it seems like, oh my gosh, I'm late to the studio and there's going to be traffic, I know it's going to take me for a super long time. Why can't somebody else just go down there?
Hmm.
And then you get there and then somebody comes in with flowers for you, or somebody comes in, they're like, oh, it's my 100th day in a row, I'm so grateful for the studio, thank you, I don't know what I would do without it. Every time you go there, somebody says something to you into some effect of some form of, this has changed my life. Who gets that? I
Right.
don't think many bankers get that, or
Right.
accountants.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I mean, I know both of those kinds of people. That doesn't happen at their workplace very often.
Hmm.
It's life-giving. So I think
Yes.
those are my two takeaways. I hope I was clear.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree. It's, as a teacher, you've sort of dedicated yourself to a path of service. And in giving that service, you do get a lot back. It might not be, um, monetary, or like you're living a hugely luxurious life or something, but you get a lot back energetically, spiritually. And I think as a studio owner, that's even more so the case. You end up giving a lot of yourself,
Yes.
but you also get a lot back in return, for sure.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They say it's the highest karma. So, the being a teacher, because you hold, you keep the knowledge. And I oftentimes get a little frustrated with, um, always when you promote something, it's so hard. People drag their feet or whatever. You're like, why am I planning this huge, teacher training or seminar or retreat? And then 10 days before, you finally get the number of people that you need to like get by or pay for it or whatever. And then
Yes.
sometimes you get to pay yourself, and that's great. But I think it's something that I look back and I think, I'm so glad I went to this, and I'm so glad I went to that, and I'm so glad I, did such and such seminar, because there's this one thing in my brain that I'm so sure about. Just like one bit of insight.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't people sign up? Because if you've done one or two yoga classes or seminars, like there's always something there.
Yeah.
It's always something there to learn. And maybe it's just something that this master teacher said to a person there. It may not have had anything to do with you, but then you're like, oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah.
And then you live with this understanding or principle. And that's, insight or knowledge, wisdom. It is something that I think we get to hopefully share.
Mm-hmm. And this actually brings me to one of my other questions for you. When you were visiting Pittsburgh a couple of years ago, helping out with our teacher training, you had mentioned this concept, and in Sanskrit, I believe the word is the Parampara, the golden chain of teachers. So why do you think that's such an important concept, and what does that mean exactly?
Well, I don't know exactly where I fit in that chain, but
You do.
it is,
That's just your humbleness coming out.
well, dharma or wisdom, passing on of it. There are, I think, a lot of different sayings that go along with it, but none of them really touch on, we're in a new day of, and I'm not just talking about these last couple weeks, but of yoga teaching. And I'm reading this really long article about how Iyengar learned from his teacher, and that his teacher was actually quite abusive and didn't actually, like, I think we all just think that this guru disciple relationship is, from elementary school until college or something like that, where you apprentice and you learn this skill, sort of like carpentry or something. And that's not what it was always. But usually people had one teacher, and it was like a passing down. It's sort of like the way that I think in my little American brain. I think about things that I pass on to my kids, recipes or whatever, traditions from my grandparents, my ancestry. But now we're in this day where you can learn from so many different teachers. And I I personally believe it's really good. It's like being a free agent, your own, you know, um, agent of
Mm-hmm.
of um, learning, basically. We have so much available to us, so many different styles and so many different teachers, and I believe it's really good. But um, that is, like oftentimes people say, don't shoot the messenger. Like are we messengers? Are we just a vessel? To me, I believe it's like something that's like passing through us, almost without us even knowing. Like
Right.
it's a through rather than holding it or bringing it, passing it forth, and then just like this weight is lifted. Like, oh, I'm so glad if I was a messenger, I'm so glad you got your letter. you know
Mm-hmm.
now it's not my thing anymore.
Right.
It's this continual karma that we develop and share through our whole lives. You don't get to be like done.
Mm-hmm. And just as a human being, we're like passing down this knowledge from the ages. I just spent a little bit of time in India and um, working with yogi philosophers and priests, and it was really interesting being immersed in a culture where you know basically for the past 4, 5, 6,000 years, who knows how long, they've been practicing these same rituals, these same postures, these same whatever, like all of it has been passed down for centuries relatively unchanged. um, and it's really interesting to just to be a part of that and to witness that. And what we've been talking about, like asana and pranayama and stuff like that, is just the smallest little bit of that vast pool of knowledge that comes from India and that area in the ancient world. I think it's amazing, it's fascinating, and that chain of teachers, that parampara, I think, like learning from a teacher and passing that information on as an act of service is really important. But I agree with you, being able to learn from multiple teachers and taking the best of that information and sort of filtering it, I think is also, it's a benefit of living in this age.
Huh. Yeah, and I think because of that, because of the way that we're learning now, it's exploding. It's
Right.
um, really, I just look at what happened as well when things went online. A whole different host of people kind of came forward, and I'm thinking to myself, why is that?
Mm.
You know, why are there people that are very comfortable in this virtual thing? They're
Mm-hmm.
coming every day. Is it because they know now they're desperate for it, or is it because they don't have to drive and they don't have to be at a studio and they can be somewhat anonymous? Um,
I think it's
and
probably a little
then,
bit of both.
yeah, and I was teaching a meditation course at the middle school just because my kids had gone to this particular middle school, and very, very stressful job, and um, just for the middle school teachers. And, it was like 3 to 5 people, 7 people, you know. And then I did my first online one, there's 20 people there. And I didn't want to guilt people, but I was like, what is it that's so much easier to show up now?
Yeah.
That I don't understand. Like I'm a pretty social person. I don't necessarily, and even when I was 30 or 40 pounds heavier, I always think, well, maybe people are self-conscious. they don't want to be in the yoga studio, whatever. I just think that some people are very comfortable in this, by a computer.
In this little
And
box.
you
Yes.
can mute or not mute.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way people live and learn things and watch YouTube and things like that. And so
Yeah.
it's forcing a lot of us out of our studios and out of our comfort zones. And
which maybe is not the worst thing in the world. Yeah. To reach more people.
Temporary. I mean, but I'm on these so many different Facebook groups of studio owners, and and I love that support system.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember somebody mentioned, well, now that we're good at this, maybe we have one virtual class a day, even when we reopen. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
That's really? I mean, it seemed so clunky at first, and there's so many parts about it that make me crazy. But yeah, I mean, we had people from 5 different states. And there's, we've been open a long time. And so we have teachers on many different continents
and students
bringing them back.
Mm-hmm.
We had a teacher who's now living in New Zealand and isn't even American citizen anymore. And it's so fun to like see him like he's next door and listen to how much he's changed and everything. I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, but I think now is our time to learn it and embrace it.
Definitely. I agree. Your father was a pastor, is that right?
Yes.
At a very large church in Minneapolis, if I'm not mistaken. A very large, pretty successful congregation. In your bio, you said you credit your parents for your immediate love of yoga by fostering a strong and deep faith at a very young age. Why do you make that connection between your faith and your yoga practice?
I think because even though neither of my parents would say they were traditionally or classically trained in meditation, both of them did. My dad was the first person that I ever heard say the word meditation. He was a captain in the Navy and very physically fit. And that in Minnesota, the winters get pretty cold.
Yeah, I've experienced
we were always outside every day. We spent hours outside, no matter what. And he would go on these long skis in the woods, on these old Army surplus skis. And I would, trudge along behind him. And I'd be like, why is he way out there in front? I thought I was, on this ski to like be together, or whatever. And he said, don't you love the woods? It's so meditative. And I'd be like, yeah, I get it. I get it. Just the sounds of a winter forest. And, unless you get really deep in the woods, you don't notice the little intricate sounds, and you're very insulated from everything else. And everything sounds really soft, like it's covered in styrofoam. And so that was his form of meditation. My mom would wake up she still does, every morning and read her Bible. And along the edges of her Bible, she'd write a little journal. And then she has 10 children. And so there's, I don't know how many, there's 100 living relatives, right? And just like her great grandchildren, I don't know, a lot. And she goes down this list of all of us and prays for us every day. Mm-hmm. And so I think about that as well. And now more and more learning more about the brain and where your brain is actually when you're in a state of meditation. And you meet these people in the hospital. It's crazy. I met this guy who was head of our Alzheimer's Foundation here, and he was going off to give a talk. So he said that they had made this new discovery in this nun who had given her body to science. And he's told me that I can share that I was scanning him, just so you think I'm not like going beyond professional boundaries. Anyway, they performed an autopsy on this nun who her brain showed very advanced stages of dementia. But in life, she had shown none. No forgetfulness, nothing, no symptoms of Alzheimer's or dementia. And a different part of her brain very developed. So obviously nuns, monks, they spend long periods of time chanting or singing, whatever you want to call it, and in prayer. And to me, it's the same kind of thing when you go to a sacred place inside of you. And a very, very quiet place. And that's what I think my parents instilled in me, that is the same as all of these skills that I'm developing still is that you have this very, very personal relationship with your faith or your God or whatever you want to call it, infinite spirit, that when you connect with your own spirit, it's very quiet and intimate place. But just like we say namaste to people, like everybody has that place. That's, I guess, what I learned from them, that commonality.
Awesome. So following that up, what is yoga to you?
I think it is the physical manifestation of that expression that I just mentioned. This very sacred and holy spirit or whatever that is inside of me. I think about, I have a teenager and I think, he's like learning his emotions, right? You think he's like, I don't know why people are so sensitive. People are so emotional, or this girl's depressed at my school, or that. He's like, I don't have anything to be sad about. I feel great. I'm like, that's wonderful. But to feel is something that separates us from every other living being, basically. To be able to feel, and the awareness of our own awareness, right? Or whatever, being a sentient being. Why not then be grateful for it and feel?
Yep.
So I guess, my yoga practice is, I know what it feels like when I don't. And I've been sick before, chronically sick, migraines, and those symptoms come back if I don't practice. So it's a habit. It's something I don't think about. It's not like, should I do it today? It's when. And it gives me pleasure to feel healthy inside my own body. And I know it's a privilege more and more, because I think it's a precious commodity. There's a lot of people out there that don't feel comfortable in their own bodies or in their own skin, or they don't have something that they know works to feel okay. They're still seeking out the next prescription or diagnosis, and they're really searching for it. And feel very grateful to have something that I know works. And so I demonstrate it by doing it.
Yeah.
Demonstrate that gratitude, I guess.
Yep. Be the change, right?
I hope so.
So you, among many other things, are a timber framer, right? Does that make you a master carpenter, or is that just a hobby?
There it is, right here. I'm sitting in it.
Haha.
It's for sure.
You built that. Okay. It's a pretty impressive hobby.
I'm kind of cold anyway, so I think I'll go inside.
Wonderful.
But it's something I haven't had a lot of time for lately.
There's so many things.
Because I've been in school. But
you have an amazing garden at your home. I remember you have chickens, and you're an amazing cook as well. As well as being a studio owner, and your medical practice now. So what, do you have anything like right now that is like catching your interest, or like what's like, what are you involved in right now?
Finishing school mostly.
Yeah.
That's my biggest thing. And definitely gardening. I mean, it's going to be April tomorrow, so there's seeds that, I mean, that's an interesting question, Zeb. I feel like I always have like the thing, and it's really interesting that you ask, because there's always something that, when you go to bed at night, you're studying it. I mean, I study a lot, but I think it's just that it's trying to push through. And I was supposed to graduate May 2nd. And I don't know if you need to know this, but this is the second time I've gone through school, because my school was involved in this big controversy. It closed, Argosy University, last year. So it was one of something like 37 universities that closed because of corporate greed. Basically, it was bad news. And that was almost a year ago from the time that my program stopped this time. So, if I was a different kind of person, I would be like, oh, it's a sign, I'm just really not supposed to be a stenographer. But I know I'm supposed to do it. I mean, that's one of my friends once told me, because and you mentioned that I have a lot of different things I'm passionate about and interested in. And I had never thought about it this way, but she said that is, what did she call it? Such a luxury to know things like that. And I suppose it is faith. It's like, no, I just know I'm supposed to be doing this. Like, there's not a doubt. I think that's what faith is. It means that it's something that is there in your consciousness that you no longer question. Yeah. And I think it's a beautiful thing. It is a luxury. I do feel like, I love to garden, and I love to grow food, and I love to take care of the earth and build things with wood. I love those things. I get so much enjoyment out of it. But when you think about it, that's like when people have things in their mind that they don't question, that is so dangerous. The faith-based decisions, for instance, that our country is making now, puts people on two sides of an argument, and it becomes very polarized. And it's because that, their faith is involved in their decision-making process. Right. And faith. That's an interesting point. You no longer question, same-sex marriage, for instance. People on both sides of that argument would be saying, I just know it's right. And there's no arguing with someone when they say something like that. So right. I like to think of the concept of that, like, yes, it is a luxury to know something, but it's also, it is also good to look at, is it serving just me? Is it a hobby that is just totally an indulgence, or is it something that revolves or reverberates out to something that is good? Has a greater purpose. Just me. And with just my personal agenda or beliefs involved. I think that's one of the most important things that my faith has taught me, is that everyone should have that. Everyone should be able to make those free choices and decisions.
Absolutely. Do you have anything, what is your best advice for the people that are listening right now?
Well, Emmy gave me the best yoga advice I've ever gotten, so I should share that. Create a habit of doing yoga. You know, I habitually make coffee every morning. Things that you do habitually that are really powerful, that is a habit. And that does reverberate out, whether you feel it or not. I think you just mention or tell someone you're going to do yoga, and that's that spreads this knowledge. But as far as a yoga studio, I would say, you know, it's okay to constantly change why you're doing it. You know, because the world changes around us. And I think so many circumstances have swirled around the fact that I'm still open. You know, when I opened in Minneapolis, I was the only yoga studio. There's nothing with like a bathroom and showers and anything. And we were like the coolest place, the like most well outfitted, whatever. And now we're like the dive bar, you know, we're like the old, you know what I mean? And I'm totally fine with that, because, you know, it's like, where do you go when you want that burger or whatever that only one place has? You know, there's this place, Matt's Bar in Minneapolis, that has this thing called the Juicy Lucy. It's a cheese-filled hamburger, and like people fly in to have one. I'm like, people are going to fly in to, you know, come see my ratty old yoga studio and be, you know, whatever. It's a kind of an institution. But when I opened
the energy that's built up there over the
now
years.
I'm still the only Bikram studio of the 26 postures. It's the only studio that has it. The craziest thing. There was one time there were 9, and then things changed. And in the last few years, you know, people keep asking me, well, you're going to have this great job now. Why would you want to own a yoga studio? Are you going to sell it or whatever? And certainly I've thought about it. It's a lot. And then it's like, then it's your lifeblood on the other hand, right? So it's where you go when everything has hit the fan.
Right.
And you walk in the doors, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I got here. And these are my people. And why did I ever think about that I could live without this place, you know? And
I think it's that for a lot of people, for a lot of your students, it's a place of refuge.
Absolutely. Yes. And you know, the modern church, I mean, their attendance is going down really fast. And I think about, you know, our biggest class is 9:30 on a Sunday morning. And for a lot of my students, it is their church, you know, and is their sacred, safe place. And so there have been changes in why, you know, why I'm there or still there or whatever. You know, don't be afraid to, you know, set a different course and you know, like a lot of different people teaching different classes or whatever, not just the way you teach and who you hire, how you hire. Don't be afraid to use all of your tools and change the way that you look at it, because ultimately it is your child. Do I get to tell my favorite story about you, Zeb?
Sure, you can tell it.
Okay, so long before there was a teacher training, after you won your first championship, Zeb, you came to Minneapolis to do a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And
with Gloria, right?
Yes. And it was the last day, and you were headed out of town. And, you know, I have this way of, and Rafe can tell you that it's true, I have this way of just like always wanting to pack in all the things. You know, like we went to New York City. It's like, oh, we can do one more thing. We for sure have to. We have a hot dog at the vending stand, and we have to see listen, to go see the Statue of Liberty. And then so I have these very unrealistic ideas of what can be done in a certain period of time. So as I remember it, it was about less than 2 hours until your flight. And so I had talked to the principal earlier, like a week prior, and I've been like, you know, if we can fit it in, is there a way that we can, you know, if the Zeb could come and if I could convince him to do a demonstration, I think the kids would really dig it. And so we had been at the studio, and I think your flight was at like 1:40, and the class ended at 11, so it had to be like 11:40, 12 o'clock. And so I just thought, you know, our studio is here, the airport is here, the kids' school is over there. So it was very not practical at all. It was like 20-minute drive there, 20-minute here. It's like get to the airport. Anyway, I was like, Zeb, do you think you could just let's go to my son's school and give a demonstration? And you know, you have this way, Zeb, of like deadpan for like a few seconds. I didn't know if you would be like, no, there's no way. I'll never make my flight. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But you're like, yeah, I'll do that. And it was so endearing and wonderful that you would just agree, hello, doggy. And then when you did the demonstration, you know, not everybody is built to do those at an elementary school. So all the kids got in this big circle. And this is one of the worst technological goof ups of my life. But the gym teacher said, I'm recording it on my iPad. So I trusted him. You know, he didn't record it.
Oh, no. So there's no recording.
No, it's, but it was wonderful. You did these things where you'd like go up into Scorpion, like, whoa, like I'm falling over. And then you would catch yourself. And it was just so fun. And the kids loved it. And, you know, because you can give a demonstration and then people think, oh, yoga is just a contortionist guy. That's their memory, you know, of the 100 kids that were there, probably 2 had ever seen yoga before. And they were exposed to this, you know, gorgeous young man who's just so talented and fun and funny, and you just exuded yoga for them that day. So that's my favorite Zeb story.
Well, hopefully some of them will go on to find their practice. That's my wish for them. That was a fun day. I really enjoyed that.
It was cool. It was a great moment.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
And hopefully we can keep doing these little meetings. I don't know how much longer we're going to be locked away from each other, but it's great to see your face. And you too, Rafe.
Goodbye, Thank you, Zeb.
Thanks, Zeb.